Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishwapad Paramahamsa Parivartikacharya Ashtottara Shrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishwapad Paramahamsa Parivartikacharya Ashtottara Shrimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai All glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glorious to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Gaur, Hare, Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraye Nashtapraye Shabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Ruttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 14, entitled Lord Chaitanya's Childhood Pastimes, verse number 1. कथाञ्चन स्मृते यस्मिन् दुष्करं सुकरं भवेत् विस्मृते विपरीतं स्यात् श्रीचैतन्यं नमामि तम् कथाञ्चन स्मृते यस्मिन् दुष्करं सुकरं भवेत् विस्मृते विपरीतं स्यात् श्रीचैतन्यं नमामि तम् कथञ्चन स्मृते यस्मिन् दुष्करं सुकरं भवेत् विस्मृते विपरीतं स्यात् श्रीचैतन्यं नमामि तम् कथाञ्चन स्मृते यस्मिन् दुष्करं सुकरं भवेत् विस्मृते विपरीतं स्यात् श्रीचैतन्यं नमामि तम् कथाञ्चन स्मृते यस्मिन् दुष्करं सुकरं भवेत् विस्मृते विपरीतं स्यात् श्रीचैतन्यं नमामि तम् कथञ्चन स्मृते यस्मिन् दुष्करं सुकरं भवेत् विस्मृते विपरीतं स्यात् श्रीचैतन्यं नमामि तम् माताजी कथञ्चन स्मृते यस्मिन् दुष्करं सुकरं भवेत् विस्मृते विपरीतं स्यात् श्रीचैतन्यं नमामि तम् कथञ्चन somehow or other स्मृते by remembering यस्मिन् whom दुष्करं difficult things सुकरम easy भवेत become विस्मृते by forgetting him विपरीतम just the opposite स्यात् become श्री चैतन्यम Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu नमामि I offer my respectful obeisances tam unto him. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: things that are very difficult to do become easy to execute if one somehow or other simply remembers Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But if one does not remember him, even easy things become very difficult. To this Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I offer my respectful obeisances. Purport: in his book Chaitanya Chandramrit, Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati says, one who receives a little favor from the Lord becomes so exalted that he does not care even for liberation, which is sought after by many great scholars and philosophers. Similarly, a devotee of Lord Chaitanya considers residence in the heavenly planets a will-o'-the-wisp. He surpasses the perfection of mystic yoga power because for him, the senses are like snakes with broken fangs. A snake is a very fearful and dangerous animal because of its poison fangs. But if these fangs are broken, the appearance of a snake is no cause for fear. The yoga principles are meant to control the senses, but there is no scope for the senses of one engaged in the service of the Lord to be dangerous like snakes. These are the gifts of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Hari Bhakti Vilas confirms that difficult things become easy to understand if one remembers Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and easy things become very difficult to understand if one forgets him. We actually see that even those who are very great scientists in the eyes of the general public cannot understand the very simple idea that life comes from life, because they do not have the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They defend the false understanding that life comes from matter, although they cannot prove that this is a fact. Modern civilization, therefore, progressing on the basis of this false scientific theory, is simply creating problems to be solved by the so-called scientists. The author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita takes shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to describe the pastimes of his appearance as a child, because one cannot write such transcendental literature by mental speculation. One who writes about the Supreme Personality of Godhead must be especially favored by the Lord. Simply by academic qualifications, it is not possible to write such literature. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Shwapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lilita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Niti Namine Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauravushe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shvasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, seeking the blessings of all the Vaishnavas. This is a continuation of the celebration for Gaur Purnima. We are reciting certain specific verses about the glories of Lord Chaitanya. These are most of the chapters, if you see from Chaitanya Charitamrita, the first verse of each chapter gives a sort of summary, or it gives a very beautiful poetic glorification of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this we are reading from Adi Lila 14th chapter, first verse. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Narottam Das Thakur says, Gaurangera Madhur Leela, the beautiful pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Jar Karne Praveshila, which enters the ears, of course, submissive oral reception. Hridaya Nirmal Hridaya Bhelotar. The heart becomes Nirmal, without contamination. The heart is filled with so much of contamination. That's one of the reasons why we are in the material world. So, by hearing these beautiful pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, Gaurangera Guna, Gao Gao Puna, that Vasudev also sings, Vasudev Ghosh also sings. Let us sing the glories of Lord Chaitanya again and again. By singing these glories, what will happen? Hridaya nirmal bhilotar. The heart becomes freed from the contamination. Of course, and the hearing is not just somehow or other it enters. It is submissive oral reception. When we give that submissive oral reception to these pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Madhur Leela, it's not an austerity to hear. It is the pastimes are performed in such a way, Keval Ananda Kanda. That's what Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda have performed these pastimes. So this is a beautiful verse from from Adi Leela, 14th chapter, first verse, which talks about what happens when we remember the Supreme Lord and what happens when we do not remember the Supreme Lord. The word used is kathanchana, that is somehow or other. So we'll discuss 4 topics from this. One is about remembrance of the Lord, remembering Krishna or particularly Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here. Second is about Karunya Kataksh, the beautiful, merciful, compassionate glance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And third is when does difficult become easy? And fourth is when does easy become difficult? So these 4 subject matters we'll try to discuss on this. So Kathanchana is somehow or other. Like scriptures explain, yena kena prakarena, somehow or other. Kathanchana smrite, somehow or other remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the scriptures do say this similar verse, yena kena prakarena, mana Krishna niveshayet. Somehow or other remember Krishna. And sarve vidhi nisheda ashur etayo reva kinkara. Of all the rules and regulations, if there is a clash between multiple rules, what should take precedence? It is this one, that always remember Krishna. Or rather in this verse it is said, somehow or other remember Krishna. This is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Padma Puran says, Satatam Smartavyam Satatam Vishnur. Always remember Krishna or Vishnu. It's a very generic word is Vishnu because Krishna is not very specifically used in the Vedas. Smartavyam Satatam Vishnur. Vismartavyam na jatuchit. So also the corollary or the opposite side is also mentioned. That is always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. And the third and fourth lines are the same. Sarve vidhi nishedashur etayo reva kinkara. That is, of all the rules and regulations mentioned in the scriptures, of all the rules and regulations, this takes precedence over others. That means the scriptures are emphasizing the importance of remembering Krishna. One place it is mentioned somehow or other. In Padma Puran, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it mentioned somehow or other. In Padma Puran, it is mentioned always remember Krishna, and to add emphasis, it says never forget Krishna. That is the importance of the remembrance. So apparently we might feel why the word kathanchana, somehow or other, that looks like, hook or crook. Like our Charvak Muni says, Rinam Kritva, Kritam Pibet. Yavam Jivet, Sukham Jivet. Somehow or other, drink ghee, enjoy. Whether it's your own earned money or you have stolen it, somehow or other, drink ghee. So when the scripture says somehow or other, it's not just by hook or crook. Obviously, there is a favorable way to remember Krishna. Even Kamsa that way remembered Krishna. In fact, Kamsa was more Krishna conscious than any devotee. Narad Muni was aspiring. Narad Muni was inspired by the way Kamsa was conscious of Krishna. But of course, Acharyas explained that is not anukul. That is pratikul. That is unfavorable. But the word used somehow or other is to emphasize that it is so important to remember Krishna. Because we, as devotees, we may be engaged in services. As devotees, we may be engaged in prayers. As devotees, we may be engaged in taking darshan. So many things that we do. But when it is accompanied by remembrance of the Lord, it has a greater potency. Otherwise, most of the times what happens, we end up getting agyat sukruti. We are engaged in something, we are engaged in service, but when we are consciously doing it, when we are doing it voluntarily and consciously, these both words have their great importance or emphasis, voluntary and conscious. It has a greater impact in the purification. So, jar karne praveshala, it's like submissive oral reception. Similarly, here it's about remembrance. Somehow or other, when we are remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is having a great emphasis in terms of cleansing the heart. So, both these verses have their ending as this takes precedence over all these rules, all the rules and regulations which is mentioned in the scriptures also. It is like, as Krishna tells in the end of towards the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, Maam Ekam Sharanam Raja. So now whatever I have spoken till now, now this can supersede what I am telling right now. If you take shelter, exclusive shelter of me, then all other things can be left, and this is like supersedes the final. This is like the final punch mark. So like this, these verses are explaining that somehow or other remember Krishna. And of course, the more favorable we remember, the more beneficial it is for us. We may, whenever these clashes are there, the clashes can come because of multiple instructions, or we can say two things which is to be done. Should I do this or should I do that? Many times we have that. Sometimes devotees may have a different, dichotomy, or, should I chant or should I have some time? Should I chant or should I render services? We may have what to do now. As long as it is within the realm of Krishna consciousness, it is safe. If it is outside the realm of Krishna consciousness, it is obviously dangerous. So, when there is differences, then it can be reconciled by this fact that what takes precedence is somehow or other we have to remember Krishna. That has to take a higher precedence over anything else, where we are able to remember Krishna. Other difficulty may happen when there are multiple instructions received by different authorities. What to do about it? So this is of course a sort of a guideline, a tip in terms of where we are able to remember Krishna. Of course, in terms of practicality, in terms of the authorities, some things may have to be worked out. Jai Shri Radha Vrindavan Chandra Bhagavan ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maiya ki Jai, Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. At the same time, very important aspect is when the emphasis is on remember, it does not mean it's only remembrance is everything. Remembrance should also be accompanied by responsible action. Otherwise, someone may take the easy way out. I'll just remember the Lord and the Lord will do everything for me. Krishna did not tell Arjuna that I'll fight for you, you can sleep on the chariot and everything will be done. Of course, Krishna did show that all the Kauravas were going in the mouth of the universal form, but still Krishna expected Arjuna to fight. Nimitta matram bhava savyasachi, that you become an instrument and fight. So similarly, remembrance has its importance, prayers has its importance, but it should also be accompanied by responsible action. Otherwise, some may take shelter of only prayers and not engage in what is our part, what is our role of responsible action. So this both have to go in parallel, remembrance of the Lord as well as performing responsible action. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about the Karunya Kataksha. Prabhupada talks about the 5 benefits someone gets. One who receives the merciful glance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Anybody who receives the merciful glance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gets 5 benefits. What are they? Srila Prabhupada emphasizes in the purport, which is a beautiful verse from Prabodhananda Saraswati. Kaivalyam narakayate. First thing is, for him Kaivalya becomes narak. For an impersonalist, that is the topmost. He aspires to merge into Brahman. The topmost aspiration of an impersonalist appears to be hellish for a devotee. It's like saying if a materialist is asked, what is your topmost wish? And he says, I need 10 crores. And a devotee says, well, this is insignificant. He'll just faint. Right? He'll not be able to digest that. What do you mean it's insignificant? So when an impersonalist says his aspiration is Kaivalyam, to merge into the Brahman, for a devotee it is more than insignificant. This is hellish. It's suffocating. Cannot bear it. Kaivalyam narakayate. Tridashapur akasha pushpayate. All the things which are glamorous things which are spoken about, all are considered as, Prabhupada uses the specific word, will o' the wisp. They are considered as will o' the wisp. It's like phantasmagoria. Durdantendriya kala sarpa patali protkhata damshtrayate. For a devotee, it's like, yoga, as Prabhupada says, yoga is meant to control the senses. For a devotee, the control of the senses happen by the practice of devotional service. And it's like the example given is of a snake. If a snake is devoid of the poison fangs, it's no more dangerous. Even small children may play with it. So for a devotee, if the poison fangs, what is the poison fangs? The desire to enjoy material sense gratification. If that is removed, person is very safe. And Vishwam Purna Sukhayate. This is actually contradictory to what Krishna has spoken emphasized in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Dukkhalayam asashvatam. This material world is designed from the perspective of it's meant to give miseries. But even in this place, a devotee is able to manage what? Vishwam Purna Sukhayate. He is able to experience the entire world is a place of happiness. Vishwam Purna Sukhayate. And Vidhi Mahendradischa Kitayate. That the position, exalted position of Brahma and Shiva or Indra, Vidhi and Mahendra. Vidhi is Brahma and Mahendra is Indra. Exalted position of Brahma and Indra appear to be Kitayate, insignificant like insects, like Indragop. Who can say this? This is the gifts to one who has received the merciful glance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yat karunya kataksha vaibhavatam tam gauram evastumaha. Yat karunya kataksha vaibhavatam. This is also important to understand and realize that this happens to one whom Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu glances upon mercifully. Not that we are seeing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and we receive these 5 gifts. This gift is reserved for those whom the Supreme Lord glances mercifully. Whom does the Supreme Lord glance mercifully? That means, just like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, do not try to see the Lord, but act in such a way, serve in such a way that the Lord is eager to see. Rather than we trying to see, the Lord, if he performs certain service by which the Lord is eager to see, that is something we are earning that merciful glance. It's called earning the blessings, or we can say heartfelt blessings. For Lord Chaitanya, it's like when he was taking darshan of Lord Jagannath, when that old Orisan lady, when she was also in the midst of so many people, she was eagerly wanting to take darshan of Jagannath, and she didn't realize where she was. One leg she puts on the Garuda Stamba, another leg she puts on the shoulders of Lord Chaitanya. And Govinda is saying, get down, what are you doing? Do you know, both legs are, even you're offending the Lord and Garuda Stamba. And of course, here is the Lord who is in the form of his own devotee. What an offense you are committing. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called him as Adivas. This Govinda, he was angry on Govinda, of course, from the rasa perspective. But Lord Chaitanya was so happy to see the eagerness of this old Orisan lady. She was so eager to take darshan of Lord Jagannath, and Lord Chaitanya prayed, aspired, if I can get a drop of this eagerness by which she is with which she is trying to see Lord Jagannath, if this much I can get, my life will be successful. So this is meaning that she was seeing Jagannath, but Lord Chaitanya was seeing, his merciful glance was on this old Orisan lady. In the house of Srivas Thakur, when there was Mahaprakash Leela being performed, this wonderful Leela, where so many prominent devotees were called. Prominent devotees were called and asked for the prayers, but there were so many apparently not so famous people who were just rendering services. Like here it is mentioned, Dushkaram sukaram bhavet. Things which are difficult becomes easy. Dushkaram sukaram bhavet. Similarly, here in this Mahaprakash Leela, Dukhi became Sukhi. One who was named as Dukhi, but Lord Chaitanya noticed, Yat Karunya Kataksha. He noticed that who is this lady who is simply taking the vessels filled with the Ganga water and passing it on, and she's rendering service without having much expectation in return. Lord Chaitanya personally calls, and in one sense we can say initiated, Dukhi becomes Sukhi, just like how Prabhupada made hippies into happies. Lord Chaitanya made Dukhi into Sukhi, Srila Prabhupada made hippies into happies, and much more. It's like the mass of people, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So when Lord Chaitanya's glance falls on the devotee, then they have a complete transformation. So the 5 gifts are mentioned as a reciprocation. It's not that the devotee aspires for that. It's a reciprocation for one whom Lord Chaitanya glances mercifully. Like this, actually, it is a very great glory to receive the glance of the Supreme Lord or of the Acharyas, of the spiritual master. Like Yamunacharya had glanced on Ramanuja when he was in Kanchipuram temple. Yamunacharya glance was feeling for him, that he is still in the clutches of Yadav Prakash. So he's like offered a silent prayer. Similarly, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, he mentions about our Prabhupada, saying that I have noted, he likes to hear. So that special glance of the spiritual master or of the Supreme Personality of Godhead goes a great way in receiving heartfelt blessings. And that is what Srila Prabhupada is talking about as the merciful glance. Otherwise, in the material world, there can be, people sometimes may have kama kataksh. It's a lusty desire. Even in an assembly of many people, the person may manage to see who he wants to or what he wants to. You have this famous story of, was that holding umbrella? Dhanurdas. Dhanurdas was holding an umbrella for Hemamba. Was an entire procession going on. Everybody was focused on the Supreme Lord. Wonderful processions going on. Kirtans are going on. Decorations are there. But he was focused on holding an umbrella for Himamba, for her, and just looking at that. And sometimes in the material world we can have, krodha kataksh, anger. Sometimes in a kirtan, if the beats go, as they say, off beat. And of course it depends on who the leader is. Sometimes, I don't want to name, sometimes there have been big leaders who are a little sensitive about kirtans or about anything of this fact. So when they are leading kirtan, if the kirtan goes, the musical instruments go offbeat, they just have to turn around, and that is sufficient for the kirtaniers to understand, something is wrong. And either you stop playing or you call some experts, you handle it now. Or as somebody is speaking during the class, Bhagavatam class is going on. Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur, when he was giving a class, at one point of time, even Abhay Charan, Srila Prabhupada, and one of the other donors happened to be conversing. And Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur stops and says, you think you can purchase me, by your money? So basically, like apparently it's a krodha kataksh that, this is not acceptable. So it may be used, sometimes it is useful, and of course it may have to be sensitively used if it is used, obviously, otherwise people get offended apparently. But rather than talking about kama kataksh and krodha kataksh, we should be aspiring more for this karunya kataksh of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that is something which we have to earn. That is something which is not we seeing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu seeing us mercifully based on whatever one has. It need not be big things, whatever it is, in terms of pleasing the Lord. Hare Tattanam Shani. Sorry, not Harishadhanam. Samsiddhir Haritoshanam. Sorry. Samsiddhir Haritoshanam. That is pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyway, the verse, the focus is on what happens when you remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The first two verses which we saw, Yena Kena Prakarena, in those verses, and Smartavyam Satatam Vishnu. In these two verses, what we saw is somehow or other remember Krishna and always remember Krishna, do not forget Krishna. This particular verse, what we are seeing, is talking about what will happen if you remember Krishna. It's like a continuation. What will happen if you remember Krishna, and what will not happen when you remember Krishna. So what is given? If you remember Krishna, what will happen? Even difficult things becomes easy. And what will happen if we do not remember Krishna? Then even easy things becomes difficult. Of course, here it is like specific. So the generic understanding is if you remember God. That's a generic understanding. And Vaishnava's understanding is if you remember Ram, Krishna, this Vishnu, that's a more Gaudiya Vaishnava understanding. But Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, being we can say a fan or a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, he is specifically using Sri Chaitanyam Namamitam, specifically using for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If we remember Lord Chaitanya, then even difficult things becomes easy, and if we don't remember, even easier things become difficult. So some people may have difficulty understanding how can difficult things become easy, and some people may have difficulty understanding how can easy things becomes difficult, right? Both appear apparently difficult, but it becomes easier when we remember Lord Chaitanya. So when difficult things becomes easy, of course, also we have to understand that in our understanding, our difficulties are apparently petty material difficulties. Water is not there, electricity is not there, or internet. Today's time, it's internet is not there working. Whatever things like that may be there. That's not what is being spoken about. If internet is not working, we remember Lord Chaitanya. It becomes immediately fixed. When does difficult thing become easier? The remembrance of the Lord, and as we said, it should be accompanied with responsible action also. So the Supreme Lord makes it very, very clear that the difficult things that we are talking about is not the petty material things that one faces in this material world, but something where we are apparently, it's like sometimes it can be a life and death situation. For some people, it can be an emotional turmoil that devotees may go through. Apparently, when we take shelter, this verse is talking about taking shelter of the Lord, remembrance in the sense that how one takes shelter, how Prahlad Maharaj took shelter, how Draupadi took shelter of the Lord. In that intense remembrance, the Lord reciprocates. So there are so many wonderful pastimes. So I'll just try to give some examples to understand that how difficult things become easy and easy things can become difficult. And then based on time permits, I'll try to discuss on one particular pastime from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's. So to understand about how difficult things can become easy, it is described that even the Vedas personified, or even, there are so many rishis who are performing austerities for millions of lifetimes, but they are not able to approach even the toenails of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from a Brahman perspective also. But we find in the Damodar Leela, we find Yashoda Maya is able to bind Krishna. Somebody, the Vedas personified, not able to approach the toenails, but here Mother Yashoda is able to bind Krishna by her love. On the contrary, easy things become difficult. Kalayavan, who was running after Krishna, who was walking. Easy things, apparently easy, but it became difficult. He was not able to catch. It's like, if we say that a small child is running and his father is walking, we may still understand that maybe the child is still not able to catch the father. Small child is running and the father is walking because there is an age difference. Child is incapacitated. But here what we see is Kalayavan running and Krishna is walking. It's apparently people of the same age. It's like two people of the same age. And Kalayavan is running. Still he is not able to catch. Apparently easy, but it has become difficult. He was not able to catch at all. Ultimately, he had to enter the cave, and he was burnt by the another glance of Muchukunda, Krodha Kataksh. He was burnt by that. So things which are difficult can become easy, and very famous examples are like Mahabharata and Ramayana. Apparently, if you see Ramayana, Lord Ram marching with the army of Vanaras. They are not very equipped with weapons, and they are not very skillful in arms, but they are able to defeat so easily the army of Ravan, who had so many mystic siddhis. Not just Ravan, including even so many soldiers. Ultimately, they were Rakshasas. They had so many extra powers, but then did not work out. Or if you see whether it is the Mahabharata, the Pandavas versus the Kauravas, 7 Akshayoni soldiers. With 7 Akshayoni soldiers, Pandavas were still able to manage to defeat the Kauravas, who had 11 Akshayoni soldiers. Plus, they had Narayani Sena. Narayani Sena is considered to be indefeatable. Plus, they had Bhishma, who had an Ichhamrityu. Now, if somebody has Ichhamrityu, how is it possible to defeat that army? Plus, they had Drona, who was the martial, spiritual master of, in the warfare for the Pandavas. The very person who has trained them is against them. With all this, still it became difficult for the Kauravas. One more classic example is the churning of the milk ocean, the demons and the demigods. Initially the demigods were actually, they were devoid of power. Demons had already overpowered them. And the demigods had approached the Supreme Lord. And Supreme Lord says, you can churn the milk ocean. And when they were not able to do, of course, initially, the Supreme Lord asked that the demons also can be involved. And, both of you can churn. When the nectar comes, you will get it. So both have struggled. The demons and the demigods both have struggled to churn the milk ocean. But finally, when the nectar comes, was it difficult for the demigods? Definitely yes. Because the demons had forcibly taken it away. When finally the pot of nectar came, the demons snatched it, forcibly took it away. But still, the Supreme Lord arranged it in such a way that the demigods get that nectar, and the demons, in spite of having it in their hands, voluntarily gave it to Mohini Murti, saying that you can distribute wherever you want. Wherever your Karunya Kataksha goes, you can distribute. So they just gave the pot of nectar foolishly to Mohini Murti. So apparently easy, they had in their hands, they could have drunk it, but it became difficult. Nobody got it. Then only, of course, Rahu and Ketu got little bit, and their necks were cut. So things which were difficult became easy for the demigods, and things which were easy became difficult for the demons. So easy becomes difficult is there will be a lot of obstacles laid when one does not remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whereas when one remembers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is things will work out. When we say work out means in terms of taking shelter, in terms of intensifying the shelter. Like otherwise apparently it may seem the gopis are such pure devotees of the Lord, but why is it that Krishna keeps testing them? We might feel, why don't they get what they want? So ultimately Krishna is intensifying what apparently appears as misery or anxiety is actually a source of great bliss for the devotees. And Krishna wants to reciprocate in that particular way. So from the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, we can see this one specific about the eagerness of Prataparudra wanting to get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Here it was difficult. Eventually it was arranged by two things. One is his intense remembrance of the Lord, of Lord Chaitanya, and his appeal to the devotees of the Lord. Because of that which was difficult, which was almost impossible for him to meet Lord Chaitanya was finally arranged. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya initially, he approaches Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and requests, saying that, Lord, there is a wonderful devotee who happens to be the king, and he desires to have your darshan. As soon as Lord Chaitanya hears, king, immediately his antenna is up and says, he may be a great devotee, but as soon as you say king, he is Vishayi. He's a materialist. He's associating with those who are materialists. I cannot see. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was trying to add or somehow or other make Lord Chaitanya see King Prataparudra. And he said that although he is a king, he happens to be a great devotee. And Lord Chaitanya says it's like having a pot of milk. If you just have one drop of poison in it, everything is spoiled. He may be a great devotee, but he happens to be a king. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was saying other way around. He may be a king, but he happens to be a devotee. And Lord Chaitanya is saying he may be a devotee, but he happens to be a king. So it was, and then eventually Lord Chaitanya is saying, if you continue to talk about this, I will leave Jagannath Puri. And meanwhile, King Prataparudra is asking Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Lord Chaitanya was here in the kingdom. Why did you allow him to leave Jagannath Puri? Because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said he has gone in search of his brother. Basically this is a South Indian tour. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is saying he has already left Jagannath Puri. Prataparudra was so eager, saying that how could you allow him to leave Jagannath Puri? Like his intense love, he said, I want to have his darshan. How can you allow him to leave? Of course, that way, even Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya himself could not tolerate that. He himself had fainted when Lord Chaitanya left from Jagannath Puri, from Alalnath particularly. But even Prataparudra was so eager, expressing his eagerness, saying that I want to meet Lord Chaitanya so badly. Eventually, then Ramananda Rai, then he puts his petition. Ramananda Rai had met Lord Chaitanya in the South Indian tour in Kovur, and Lord Chaitanya had requested Ramananda Rai, you can resign from your post and come to Jagannath Puri, and we will have nice Harikatha, we will have nice kirtans, and we'll have nice discussions. Even when he was in Kovur, they had almost like whole night discussions, a lot of Krishna Katha they had. So he said, you can resign from your post, government post, and you can come to Jagannath Puri, we can have a lot of Krishna Katha. So when Ramananda Rai returns, he puts his petition, saying that because he was working under King Prataparudra, and he said, when I mentioned your name, that I met Lord Chaitanya, and here, King Prataparudra was so excited. I could see ecstasy, symptoms of ecstasy manifested in him. And then he says, the moment I said, I want to resign so that I can go and meet Lord Chaitanya, King Prataparudra was so ecstatic. He said, I am not able to do that. I am aspiring, eagerly waiting to see Lord Chaitanya. But if Lord Chaitanya has called you, you are so fortunate. You please, you can resign peacefully. And moreover, whatever you are earning, you will get it as pension. Some place it is mentioned double. It's pension. Difficult things become easy. Somebody wanted to resign and gets a double pension. So just by remembrance of Lord Chaitanya. And Prataparudra was so eager and so happy to hear this. Immediately he says, you can go and you don't have to worry about your the monetary part. You will receive it as pension. So Ramananda Rai was trying to put forth petition to Lord Chaitanya, saying that he is a wonderful devotee. But still it did not work. Lord Chaitanya was still not able to budge, saying that at the end of it he is still a king, he is still a Vishayi. So I'm not ready to give an oral reception. Meanwhile, Prataparudra asked, what is the status? I had requested from Sarvabhaumacharya, I had requested from Ramananda Rai. And so what did Lord Chaitanya say? So Sarvabhaumacharya explained that Lord Chaitanya had said that if we talk about the subject anymore, he will leave Jagannath Puri. So Prataprudra was even more disturbed. No, whatever I'm trying out, nothing is working out. So finally he appeals to all the devotees. He sends a letter to all the devotees asking for blessings. Please pray, please bless that I get an audience. I just get a chance to meet Lord Chaitanya. He's appealing to all the devotees. So seeing this, devotees feel, how can we help? Another aspect which happens during this particular time is he expresses his determination. He tells Sarvabhaumacharya that what is the use of Lord Chaitanya being Patita Pavan? Has he taken a vow that he is Patita Pavan, he is ready to deliver entire universe except for a king named Prataprudra? Is that what he is fixed about? And saying that I am ready to become a mendicant. If I do not receive the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, I am ready to beg from door to door. I am even ready to give up my life if I do not receive the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. When Sarvabhaumacharya sees, when he hears about this and understands the determination of Prataprudra, he says, because of your determination, very soon, things will work out. And all the devotees started working in unison. Lord Nityanand Prabhu, he approaches Lord Chaitanya and says, if you cannot meet King Prataprudra directly, you can do something indirectly. And he suggests that you can at least give your outer garments. For devotees, paraphernalia is also worshipable. Kartal, Mridang, paraphernalia. So you give your outer garments. He will be at least happy that, at least this is all like a non-different for him. He will consider this as worshipable. How a devotee sees, if we get some Maha of Prabhupada, if there is garment, shoes, stick or spectacles or anything, how will it be treated? It's Maha, it's worshipable. So Nityanand Prabhu suggests that you can give your outer garments. Lord Chaitanya says, whatever devotees deem fit, you can do the needful. As long as I am not meeting him directly, so he says, okay. And the outer garments, when the outer garments reach Prataprudra, he was literally seeing it as worshipable and touching his over his head. And he was so happy that at least I got a token mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And eventually Ramananda Rai again comes and says, and again tries to petition to Lord Chaitanya. At this time, Lord Chaitanya says, I am not ready to meet him directly, but it is said in the scriptures that the son is non-different than the father. So instead of meeting him, I can meet his son, the prince. So when this was accepted, then again devotees gathered together, orchestrated the entire event, and the prince was dressed as if like Krishna. He looked like Krishna and dressed also in Pitambar and all that. And when Lord Chaitanya saw him, he was in great ecstasy and he just embraced the prince, the son of Prataprudra. And when Prataprudra got to know about him, he was ecstatic and he embraced his son, which is like almost, indirect embrace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was finally very happy. And finally all the devotees, Sarvabhaumacharya and others, they gathered together and said, the final opportune moment is the day of Ratha Yatra. On the day of Ratha Yatra, Lord Chaitanya will be dancing in the midst of the kirtans, in front of Lord Jagannath, in front of the Ratha and the Rath cart, and that is the time you will be able to have darshan. And then of course, you can go to the Jagannath Vallabh gardens and there you can be in a mendicant form. And you can sing this beautiful verse, Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravana Mangalam Srimadatam Urigrinantiye Bhuridajana. So when he sings this verse, Lord Chaitanya is in great ecstasy. Bhurida, Bhurida, Bhurida. And he's just embracing him. So finally, this is how Prataprudra gets the mercy of Lord Chaitanya in terms of the direct audience. Otherwise, of course, Lord Chaitanya is not, from an external perspective of having the role of sannyasi, he was not wanting to give an audience. Otherwise, he knows that he is a great devotee himself. So this was very apparently difficult. One of the most difficult aspect was that in this case, the difficulty was Lord Chaitanya himself did not want to meet. What to speak of other obstacles. Lord Chaitanya himself was determined not to meet. But that also became easy because of the intense remembrance of Prataprudra about meditating about Lord Chaitanya. An additional aspect is his appeal to the devotees, petition to the devotees. So just one more, another pastime from the easy to difficult. I'll end with that, small, which is things which were easy can also become difficult. Because as I said, some people may find difficult. If it's easy, how can it become difficult? Prataprudra's father was Purushottam Dev. And Purushottam Dev, when he practically was ruling the entire Orissa, quite a big ruler, big place. And once when he comes to the place of Kanchi, South India, at that time he happens to have a tent in Kanchi. And at that time he happens to meet the princess of Kanchi. Eventually they like each other, and then it was also arranged. They meet the king of Kanchi, and it was discussed amicably that the Prataprudra, Purushottam Dev can marry the princess of Kanchi. But they said we will go back and then we'll make all the arrangements. So the minister of Kanchi was sent to the state of Orissa to inform about the marriage celebrations and all. Meanwhile, Purushottam Dev says, you can stay back because we are going to have Rath Yatra. It's a great celebration here. You can also witness all this. So the minister stayed back, to make it very short. So the minister stayed back, and then eventually when he sees Purushottam Dev sweeping in front of Lord Jagannath, he felt, what is this? This is what is done by Chandalas. How can a king do like this? Immediately he goes and reports this to the king of Kanchi. And when this was told, the marriage broke, saying that we cannot give our daughter to somebody who does an act which is equivalent to the Chandala. So the Purushottam gets very angry about it, because it's in one sense it's a personal insult also, but it is more insult for, this is actually an act done in front of Lord Jagannath. He felt it's an insult for Jagannath also. And immediately, and of course, to add to it, the king of Kanchi arranges for a swayamvar of the princess and calls all the kings except Purushottam. So this is adding to the extra anger. So now Purushottam takes her over an army and wants to fight attack Kanchi. So when he does that, apparently, it is supposed to be a very easy task for him, because he rules the entire state of Orissa, and Kanchi happens to be a very small place. So it was, in one sense, not possible that he would be defeated. But their camp got on fire, and finally they had to retreat back. So he was like wondering, what happened? Why did this happen? First of all, it was not just my insult, it was insult of Lord Jagannath as well. And on behalf of Jagannath, when I am fighting, why is it happening like this? And then he goes and prays in front of Lord Jagannath. And that is when he realizes that in his fit of anger, he had already started marching Kanchi without seeking the blessings of the Lord. So now Lord Jagannath says, now that you have come to me, now you again go back and attack the king of Kanchi. And this time it will be difficult becomes easy. This time it will be the other way around. Just 2 soldiers will be able to manage. One soldier sitting on the black horse and another soldier sitting on the white horse. With just 2 soldiers, we will be able to manage. So Prataprudra was ecstatic that now I have received the blessings of Lord Jagannath, and now if I go, it will be a sure shot victory. Of course, it was managed by just 2 soldiers, and Purushottam Dev felt very happy. Of course, eventually the minister, it was foiled by the minister of Kanchi in one sense. He reported wrongly, or half truth, or without proper understanding. But it was rectified by the minister of Purushottam. That ultimately he arranged for Padmavati, no, the princes of Kanchi to get married to Purushottam only. So from the what was difficult to achieve becomes easy. We could see the pastime of Pratap Rudra, no, getting a darshan of Lord Chaitanya. And what was easy becomes difficult. That was Purushottam Dev, because he did not offer prayers to Lord Jagannath. So Prabhupada in the example of easy becomes difficult quotes, big scientists are not able to understand the fact that life comes from life. Easy becomes difficult. Apparently even a rickshawala in India will know life comes from life. But a big scientists, many times Prabhupada quotes Kotowski, the Russian scientist, that such big scientists, but they are unable to understand that life comes from life. So we saw these 4 aspects. One is about remembrance of the Supreme Lord. The scriptures emphasize remembrance of the Lord somehow or other. Yena kena prakarena. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And the remembrance has to be accompanied with responsible action. Then we saw the importance of Karunya Kataksh, the merciful glance. There are 5 gifts one achieves when one receives the merciful glance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that is to be earned. It is not one who sees Lord Chaitanya, it is Lord Chaitanya whom he sees. Karunya Kataksh, not the Kama Kataksh or Krodha Kataksh. And then we saw about when difficult things become easy. What happens when we remember the Supreme Lord? Difficult things become easy. And what happens when one does not remember the Supreme Lord? Then easy things becomes difficult. Hare Krishna. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna.